Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today I've got the fabulous Ben Azadi with me, and I'm going to get straight into the meat of the conversation, as he just said before we started. Hey, Ben, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Stephen, great to be with you, my friend. And yes, so my name is Ben Azadi. I'm an author and speaker, and I love the carnivore, keto, low carb space. It's transformed my life. Somebody who was very unhealthy for most of my life. I was obese physically, 250 pounds at my highest weight, 34% body fat. And not only was I struggling with physical obesity, but it was mental obesity as well. And I've used these ancient healing strategies that you talk about, the carnivore diet, ketosis, fasting, to heal my metabolism and feel incredible. And that was 17 years ago. I've kept the weight off, and I love sharing how the world could apply these tools as well. So that's a little bit about myself. I have a book coming out called Metabolic Freedom, same name as the podcast, and also a YouTube channel just like you, Stephen. Mine is called Ben Azadi.
Brilliant. Okay, that is fantastic. Now, we are on the same wavelength so much. It's unbelievable. One thing I wanted to ask you about, actually, there is a lot of misinformation about health and metabolism. Do you think the mainstream health and fitness industry is too focused on profit over people's well-being?
Well, profit, absolutely, for the most part, because there's a lot of money to be made from confusing people, sick people, prescribing medication. When we think about symptoms, for example, people have symptoms, a lot of symptoms out there. I can think of a few: high blood pressure, reoccurring headaches, chronic fatigue, afternoon fatigue, acid reflux, GERD. I mean, I could continue on for hours about symptoms,
Yeah.
right? But the symptoms are not the problem. The symptoms are a result of the problem. If you have a symptom right now, instead of being angry about it or hating the symptom, you actually should thank it. You should be thankful. Why? Because this is your body's way of communicating to you. It's your body's check engine light. Most programs, the conventional sense of things, will tell you that those symptoms, we need to mask it up with excessive, maybe supplements in the wellness space, but also medication, fad diets, surgeries. But it's tackling the symptom, not getting to the cause. If your check engine light turned on your vehicle, you wouldn't just find a way to turn off the light, which is like a medication or a surgery. No, you would pull the car over, take it to a mechanic, open up the hood, find out what's going on, getting to the cause. Once you get to the cause, the symptom goes away by default. And that's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah. Yeah. It always makes me laugh, the analogy of a car, because I did genuinely have someone who had a warning light on their car and they put a little sticker over the warning light. Anyway, that's a true story, by the way. So, your personal journey got you into this, my personal journey. And I love what you said about the symptoms there, because that's a big thing. The root cause is what is really the critical thing, not the symptom. I mean, I deal with bloods a lot, and people, I want to get this level down. Well, hang on. Why is this level where this is? That's the first thing. So I think that is a really good thing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to go through a couple of sort of big issues, I think, that we're very much on a par with. And that's about things like calories. So we'll talk about that as well, because I think that is quite misleading. I fell for it all up until age 50. I believed all this stuff. So you claim that calories in, calories out has failed as an approach to fat loss. It did for me as a person. So why do you think so many nutritionists still promote this?
It failed for me too. And I was duped by it, Stephen, just like so many people have been and continue to be, unfortunately. Look, calories matter. I'm not denying the role of calories at all, but they're not important. They're a distraction. This is because if you're overweight right now, like I was when I was obese, I never had a weight problem. Newsflash, you don't have a weight problem. It's a weight symptom. Okay, we just discussed why treating the symptom is not a good idea. Well, calorie counting is treating the symptom. You see, the human body doesn't have any mechanisms in place to count calories. We're not a bank account or a math equation, or we're not any of that. We are a chemistry lab, a complex chemistry, beautiful system in place here. So the premise that people, when you hear someone teach, hey, just cut your calories, exercise more, create a deficit, when you hear that premise, The reason why they say that is because they believe we need to get you to lose weight in order for you to get healthy. Well, the metabolism, the human body doesn't work that way, meaning we don't lose weight to get healthy. We get healthy to lose weight. What does that mean, get healthy? That means you lower inflammation, you balance your hormones, you work on your metabolism. When you do that, you start burning fat, you start losing weight as a side effect of good health. The tricky part, Stephen, is that when you cut your calories, it's going to work for most people at first. You're going to start to lose some weight and you're thinking, this is it. This guy, Ben, didn't know what he was talking about. Hormones, it doesn't really matter. I just have to be in a calorie deficit. He was wrong. And then what happens after a few weeks? The weight starts to slow down because the metabolism will match the energy coming in. And most people think, well, Ben is still wrong. I'm going to just cut the calories more, exercise more, create another deficit, and then it budges again. You start to lose a little bit more weight until it slows down. But you could only cut so much until you've destroyed your metabolism. And I have two studies in Metabolic Freedom, the book, that just debunk this entire CECO, calories in versus calories out, method out of the gate. Meaning, the first study was on The Biggest Loser. And we've heard Dr. Jason Fung talk about this a lot, and he's amazing. And it took, well, The Biggest Loser was a TV show here in the United States where they took these obese, overweight individuals, put them on a calorie deficit, had them do a lot of exercise. They lost a ton of weight, like hundreds and hundreds of pounds. They celebrated them on the final episode. This study followed up with 14 of those contestants, and it showed that 13 out of the 14 gained all the weight back, and a portion of them gained even more weight than when they first started the show. And it showed that they wrecked their metabolism, their levels of leptin, which is their satiety hormone, plummeted, their levels of ghrelin, which is their hunger hormone, was through the roof, and they felt awful. Okay, it doesn't work long term. This is why there's never a reunion show for The Biggest Loser. The second study looked at fecal microbial transplants. So it's called FMT. These are where you have a donor that donates their feces. I know it sounds weird, but they donate their feces, their bacteria in their gut, and it changes your bacteria. So they had two groups in this study. They were all obese individuals. One group received fecal microbial transplants from lean donors. The other group did not receive it. Both of them had the same calories. Both groups were obese, but the group that repopulated their gut bacteria with healthy gut bacteria started to lose weight because the gut microbiome plays a role in weight loss as well. So just simply telling somebody to eat less and move more to lose weight, it's like telling somebody who wants to be rich, just spend less than you earn. Okay, that makes sense, but what's the solution, right? So we need to detach from this calories in versus calories out model and focus instead on hormones and inflammation.
Yeah, and the body's smart. It will work out how to survive. Exactly what you say, and it will down-regulate your metabolic rate and make you less energetic, so you don't move around. And yeah, I think to me, I tend not to talk about calories. I talk about the type of food and the volume of food. Because I
Smart.
think there's so many things that allegedly have no calories, and some things have empty calories. But anyway, I think that's the bottom line for me is eating the right food. Because you could have a calorie deficit. I hate that expression, because when you're in a calorie deficit, you're in a mineral deficit. You're under eating. Simple as that. So you're going to be hungry. It is literally a recipe for disaster. And I think The Biggest Loser study, although it's very sort of sensational, it gets the point across. It really does get the point across. And we see it in real life, don't we? I'm sure you do as well in your online community, where people come to you, they've yo-yo dieted. They said, "Oh, I can do it, Ben. I've lost 30 pounds. Oh, great. Oh, yeah, but I gained it all back." Because they weren't eating the right food. Their relationship with food was completely ruined. And I think, what I love about what you do, and I'm not just blowing smoke. You talk about other things that are nothing to do with food, like vitamin G, which is gratitude, and all the other things that make your life better. Um, but I will go back because both of us have probably got an audience that's a bit geeky. Right now, I'm looking at me being in ketosis. I don't tend to get a high level of ketones. I'm having a 3-day fast,
Nice.
and many, yeah, it's great, isn't it? Many
Mhm.
people feel that. getting into ketosis is unsustainable or even dangerous. So what are your views on ketosis?
There's a lot of misconceptions around ketosis, as you know, Stephen. First of all, keto is not a diet, it's a metabolic process. Nothing new about keto. It's just new to some people, maybe nuanced, but this metabolic process of ketosis has been around for as long as humans have existed. All of our ancestors, they did keto. How do I know that? Well, they didn't have food readily available. Even during the winter, it was mostly meat, no carbohydrates. So they got into this metabolic state of ketosis because it helped them survive. It's a really powerful tool. Now we have in the US, 93% of Americans are in a they're metabolically unhealthy. And in Metabolic Freedom, the book, I say that they're in a keto deficiency. They forgot how to burn fat. We hear about ketoacidosis, and that is synonymous with the keto diet, which is a whole bunch of BS. So this ketoacidosis is a severe condition. Don't get me wrong, but it is very, very rare, and only really a concern with type 1 diabetics, and even with type 2 diabetics, really rare. That's a condition where you have just excessive amounts of ketones. Like I'm talking about over 15 millimoles per liter, which is really rare to do. I've done 5-day water fasts, and my ketones never went over 5 millimoles per liter. I've seen people fast for 30 days and never goes over 8 millimoles. So, anyways, ketoacidosis is not an issue with most people. And it's perfectly safe because we're designed to use it. Babies that are born into this world are in ketosis. If they're breastfed, they're in ketosis because that breast milk has saturated fat, has cholesterol, helps that neurological development of the baby's brain, and it naturally is in this fat burning state. We are born into ketosis, but then we eat high carbs, we snack, we graze, and we take this natural fat burning body metabolism and we teach it to be a sugar burner. And that's why we have 93% of Americans being unhealthy. They're sugar burner. So I think keto is great. Now, with that being said, this might be different than other guests you've had on the show. I am a fan of flexing in and out of ketosis versus continuous long term ketosis. Now, can you be in long term ketosis and thrive? Yes, I've seen a lot of people do that. Personally, that's not my approach. I like what I call keto flexing, going in and out. It works for me, it works for my students. So I like the idea of burning sugar, burning fat, going back and forth, but primarily burning fat, primarily staying in ketosis. So that's the way that I teach it to my community.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of that as well. Actually, I
Oh,
don't think you
cool.
should be
Okay,
in long
good.
term ketosis. That's just not the way the body is. And the more you become fat adapted, the less it's important. I think the longer you're into this journey, you start ignoring the numbers and just listening to your body. And I think that's really interesting. I just want to cross some uh, T's and dot some I's
Yeah.
because we're both fans of intermittent fasting. Like I say, I'm doing a 3-day fast. What would you say to those people that say, well, all you're doing is calorie restriction? I mean, I personally know that that isn't the same. Yes, we're not eating anything for 3 days, but boy, I tell you, when I'm back on my food, I've got a good appetite and I eat plenty of food. So, how would you counter that argument that all you're doing is reducing calories for 3 days? That's it. That's basically it.
That's very different what happens when you fast and cut calories versus what happens when you graze and cut calories. So, first of all, we as human beings were hardwired for feast famine cycles. You know, when our ancestors got a kill, they would feast. They wouldn't save it and like snack and graze every 2 to 3 hours. Like, no, that didn't happen. They would feast and then they didn't have food, they would fast. We're designed for these cycles of fasting and feasting. So, by doing a 3-day fast, by doing intermittent fasting, you're following that the way that our cells are hardwired, first and foremost. Now, let's unpack something because this is a good question. And I've thought about this a lot, done a lot of research on the differences between, let's say, somebody cuts their calories, but they're eating throughout the day with grazing and snacking, versus someone who also cuts their calories, the same amount of a deficit, but they do it with intermittent fasting. There's a big difference in these two approaches because when you are cutting your calories but grazing throughout the day, you are constantly spiking glucose and insulin. You are starting the digestive processes and you are aging yourself faster. You are increasing fat storage. You are increasing risk of insulin resistance and diabetes and cancer and heart disease versus the person who's cutting their calories but having those calories in, let's say, a 6 to 8 hour eating window. Now, outside of that eating window, you're in the fasted state where you're lowering insulin, you're activating cellular processes like autophagy, you're uh, fixing the gut, you're not digesting food, you're creating something called energy diversion, which is simply means if you're not digesting food, you're diverting energy toward healing. You're getting all these amazing benefits that you wouldn't get by cutting calories and snacking and grazing. So you could do the same cut, but it's very different when the calories come in a window and the fasting comes outside of that window versus what most people do. They cut their calories and graze throughout the day. That's not a healthy approach.
No, I agree, and yeah, constantly spiking your blood glucose will constantly spike your insulin. It just to me, it seems so
Yes.
so obvious, so patently obvious. It's quite frightening that they missed that point. Um, so your book, Metabolic Freedom, is fantastic, and I've got to say that. I mean, I thought it was really good because you also talked about things that I fell for the grains and oatmeal. We call it porridge in the UK. I
Right.
mean, up until age 50, I believed all the food guidelines. Just for people that don't know me, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I ate fruit and veg. I had porridge every morning, skim milk, freshly squeezed orange juice with blueberries, raw honey from bees that lived just up the road. I did it all. I did it all. And then by the time I was 50, I was pre-diabetic, had a coronary artery calcium scan of 639. I was active,
Wow.
by the way, running
Wow.
10 miles 3 times a day. So I should have been the poster boy. Lower left quadrant pain. I had a big stress spot and athletes for everything. It was terrible. Um, so I'm really glad that you've actually mentioned grains and oatmeal in particular in the Metabolic Freedom book. So why do you think? I mean, firstly, how did they get this exalted place in our thinking as allegedly they're healthy, and why do you think they're so damaging?
What a story, Stephen. Wow. How old are you now?
60.
Wow. Well, you look great for 60. So this
Oh,
all
good,
happened
thank
10
you.
years ago, these changes. That's amazing. Well
Yeah.
done. Well
Well, I
done.
went low carb. Followed people like you. I did keto, um, but I did the typical thing. I got to 55, and I thought, well, I was low carb. What if I cut more carbohydrates? And I felt a lot better on keto, a lot better.
Yeah.
Um, and then I thought, well, if I could cut out the carbohydrates totally, how am I going to do? So yeah, 5.5 years later, I did a 30-day carnivore challenge. I'm still carnivore, but I do clients a keto plan if they want to do keto because I still feel there's a place for it, and I'm not one of these. This is my label, and I don't care what everyone else says. You're all wrong, because I'm an what's the end result? What's your clinical experience? If someone comes to me and says, I can't do carnivore, but I'm on a standard American diet, I want to go keto. Well, they're going to feel better.
Yeah.
And then one of the things I do a little teaser. I say, look, do 30 days carnivore, and then you know what that does. And if you don't want to do it for social reasons or whatever reason it is, you don't think the right is there, you miss avocados, whatever it is, you go back to keto if you feel fine. Um, but at least experience it. And I know you did that. I'm not gonna hook you back round to your 30-day experiment. Maybe later. But I think it's things like removing the bread, removing the oatmeal, all these simple things, make such a big difference, don't they? Just those two things, for instance, grain and oatmeal. So that's why I was really pleased to see it in the book, specifically mentioned. I thought this is great because if you're dipping your toe in, there's a good starting point. Take the grains out, take the bread out, take the oatmeal out, see how you get on. I'm also a big fan of continual glucose monitor or,
Yeah.
capillary testing on your finger to see that it's not us just going, these are bad foods. You can see it yourself. You can eat them and look at what happens, and you can see your blood glucose spike up. And the next day, have some bacon and eggs and see it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'd like you to sort of go into why you mentioned it in your book, because obviously it's a big thing for you as well.
Yeah, because to your point, those grains, whole grains, whole wheat, organic, it turns into sugar in the body. It might not happen as fast as eating straight up sugar, but it happens over time. And that raises glucose, it raises insulin. And if you keep doing that, that leads to metabolic disease. And the reason you asked the question, like, where did all this come from? Why do we start praising this as being healthy? Well, because we thought fat was bad for you. We thought cholesterol and saturated fat caused heart disease. So the low fat craze boomed here in the US since the 1950s and 60s from flawed research, and the whole world followed that, unfortunately, including the UK. And that's where we thought grains are healthier, oatmeal is healthier, it has the fiber. I got news for you. Like, if you live in the US and you're consuming grains and oatmeal, not only is it turning into sugar, which is not good, it's loaded with glyphosate, a nasty chemical they spray on most grains and oatmeal. Okay, maybe it's organic, maybe it's GMO free, maybe it's glyphosate free, but it's still turning into sugar in the body, and it still has anti-nutrients like phytates. You mentioned the mineral thing earlier, that when you're calorie deficient, you're mineral deficient, and you're going to be fatigued and inflamed. You're correct. When you consume a lot of these anti-nutrients like phytates that you find in grains, oatmeal included, it chelates minerals from your body. Minerals are needed for your mitochondria to produce energy, for your body to burn fat. So you lose the minerals, and it's not healthy for you. Like you mentioned, you're going to have glucose and insulin spikes. You're going to be storing fat. Bacon and eggs and avocado, or just bacon and eggs, protein and fat, that is healthy. You're right. If you put on a continuous glucose monitor or prick your finger and compare organic, heart healthy oatmeal versus eggs and bacon, what's happening to your glucose after you eat it, you're going to see a beautiful response from the eggs and the bacon. And you're not going to see the same thing with the oatmeal. You're going to see it go up and up and up and then back down. Maybe it goes down really fast and your energy levels drop. So, yeah, I put in the book because of the glyphosate issue, the fact that people say, I don't eat sugar, Ben. Why am I not losing weight? Well, you're eating carbs, which turn into sugar. So you might not be eating processed sugar, but all carbohydrates turn into sugar. And I don't think people understand that.
Yeah, and I think that's beautifully put as well. And you got into the glyphosate, so I suppose that leads us naturally to seed oils as well, which is another thing I fell for. I mean, I can remember getting my frying pan and thinking, "What a good boy am I? I'm spraying it
Yeah,
with
same.
seed oils," crazy. So I'd love you to explain again. I don't want to plug the book too much, but it is brilliant how you go into this in the book, and we'll put links in the description, make it very easy for people to get hold of it. Um, how how do you want to? Could you just put it across, sort of basically why you feel seed oils are harmful to your
Yeah.
cellular health and basically your overall health?
Yeah, that's a big issue, and it's cool, Stephen, because a lot of people are now, it's kind of become mainstream, at least here in the US. I don't know how it is in the UK, but the seed oil conversation is becoming mainstream, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. So, chapter 4 of the book gets into processed foods, and it gets into, of course, the glyphosate, the high fructose corn syrup, but also the seed oil, vegetable oil conversation. And it's important because here in the US, 80% of all of our food supply contain these seed oils, these rancid fats. They are highly, highly inflammatory, probably more inflammatory than smoking cigarettes and even processed sugar. Now, don't get me wrong, those are both bad, but the reason why these seed oils are so bad for you is because they stay in your body for a very long time. They're called polyunsaturated fatty acids. They're also called omega 6 fats. They're also called vegetable oils and also linoleic acid. And they've done studies, and I put this study in chapter 4, that the half life of these vegetable oils, meaning if you stopped eating them today, half of them will still be in your body 680 days later, 2 years later. Where is it in your body? It's in your body fat, in your cell membranes, in your mitochondrial membranes, creating chronic low grade inflammation. That's why they're worse than sugar and smoking. Yeah, with sugar, you get a glucose spike, go for a walk, it goes back down. Not good when that happens over time, but it's not as bad as 680 days. Smoking cigarettes, it doesn't linger for 680 days. And Dr. Martin Grudfeld has a study that I put in the book that I got from Dr. Kate Shanahan, so I want to give her credit. And he did a study where he looked at French fries that were cooked in vegetable oil. And he analyzed the aldehyde contents that were produced after you fry French fries in vegetable oil. Aldehydes are carcinogenic, they're cancer causing. So when you smoke cigarettes, it creates aldehydes. That's how smoking cigarettes is linked to cancer. And he said in the study, essentially, one French fry cooked in vegetable oil is equivalent to a tobacco cigarette smoked in terms of the aldehyde content being produced. So I want your audience to think about this for a second. If you've never smoked a tobacco cigarette in your life, but you've eaten 10,000 French fries in your life, it's like you've smoked 10,000 tobacco cigarettes. That's how bad they are for you. It's just the chemical structure of them. And I talk about in that chapter, chapter 4, a process called lipid membrane reorganization, meaning these studies are showing that within hours after consuming these vegetable oils, they integrate into your cell membranes. You are what you eat, literally, and it happens a lot faster than you think. And like I mentioned, it stays there for years. The list for your audience to be aware of are the following 8 fats. We have canola oil, which is called rapeseed oil in the UK, right, Stephen? Yep.
Yep.
Canola, which is rapeseed. Corn oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, rice bran oil, and grapeseed oil. Those are what Dr. Kate Shanahan calls the hateful 8. They're polyunsaturated fatty acids. Before I give the healthier swaps, I'll say something else that's controversial that I think is also an inflammatory fat. I don't remember if I cover this in the book, but it is fish oil. Okay, fish oil is not a seed oil. But fish oil is another unstable fat that people overdose, and it does a lot more harm than good. So I'm not a fan of the fish oil. I'm a fan of the fatty fish. But in the capsule, I'm not a fan. We could talk about that more if you want. But the healthier swaps are going to be saturated fats, the boogeyman, right? Those have no double bonds, meaning they're very stable. This is going to be coconut oil, butter, ghee, beef tallow, duck fat, pretty much all the animal fats with the exception of the coconut oil, which is a fruit. Then we have the monounsaturated fats that are also good. Olive oil, avocado oil. So if you just make that swap, you're going to lower inflammation, prevent heart disease, prevent cancer, burn fat, and feel good. I really encourage you to make this swap. It's super important.
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. And yes, I love the facts, and how it all works, and the shocking analogy with the cigarettes. I mean,
Crazy.
one of the things I tell diabetics is a very similar thing to you, actually, because why do you get the symptoms of thirst and urination before you've been told you're diabetic? And I say that's the body ridding you of that sugar. The body realizes there's this high sugar concentration in your blood, so it makes you drink lots to reduce the concentration of the sugar in your blood, and then you urinate it out. Your body is saying, whoa, hang on, you are doing something stupid. We've got to get rid of it. Of course,
Yeah.
with seed oils, we don't have that mechanism. We, like you say, it gets incorporated into the membranes and just wreaks havoc.
Yeah.
I think that is brilliant, actually, the way you put that. So I like that very much indeed. And like I say, because of my diabetic sort of specialism in the background there, I, I thought, yeah, that's a really good way of putting it about the
Mm.
seed oils, that they just linger for so long.
Yeah.
With the fish oils, I'm definitely, we're more akin than you think. I did experiment with fermented cod liver oil because I think that's one of the ways around the fish oil oxidizing, but I think that's a bit too much in the weeds. I really want to talk about the things I read in your book and got really excited about.
Yeah.
Maybe that's for another day.
Yeah. Round two. Round two.
Yeah, round two would be really good. Um, you do actually touch on one of my pet peeves, which is the American Diabetes Association.
Mm.
Uh, how much, I'm going to be really blunt here, how much do you think they're to blame for what's actually happening? Because to me, if they're sponsored by Pepsi or Coca-Cola, for instance, which they have had money from those companies, that is a red flag straight away. But what do you feel about people like the American Diabetes Association or the American Heart Association? What do you feel?
The American Diabetes Association are criminals. They're telling the exact opposite of what people need to hear. As a matter of fact, the same dietary plan that the American Diabetes Association recommends is the same dietary plan that leads to diabetes, right? You know
Yeah,
this. It's
yeah,
they're responsible. Absolutely, they're responsible. Now, I always say it's not our fault, but it is our responsibility, right? It's designed this way. So it's their fault that they're giving us this bad information and we believe it, but it's our responsibility to actually understand that it's not the truth and do something about it. But the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, they're all criminals. It's corrupt. And I used to say the system is broken. That's not true. The system is not broken. The system is designed perfectly the way that they wanted it to make a lot of money. Look, here in the US, we spend $4.6 trillion on healthcare every single year. Yeah, we are not even in the top 20, top 30 of healthiest nations in the world with first world countries. If that was a GDP, that $4.6 trillion that we spend every year in healthcare, if that was a GDP, it would be the fourth largest GDP in the entire world. And get this, Stephen, one out of every $4 spent on healthcare in the US is spent on diabetes, primarily type 2. And you know this as well as I do. This is a lifestyle disease, if you want to call it that, condition that's treated with medication. The amazing thing about diabetes, and let me be clear, type 2 diabetes, is that it is 100% preventable and it is 100% reversible. When will you ever hear a conventional doctor treating diabetes say that, or even the American Diabetes Association? No, no, no. That's not the language they use. The language they use is that it's 100% manageable. Let's get you on meds. Let's manage your blood sugar. But we talked about the symptoms earlier and how that's not bad. When you treat diabetes with medication, that's treating the symptom of the high blood sugar level. It actually makes the diabetes worse. And here's something else. It's really rare to die from diabetes. Yeah, people die with diabetes. They don't die from diabetes. It's what diabetes leads to: the heart disease, the kidney failures, the amputations and infections, the strokes, the vision loss. I saw this with my dad. So, this is great news because it's very easy to reverse type 2 diabetes when you remove the interference. The interference is not the high blood sugar levels, that's the symptom. The interference is the inflammation and the excessive insulin. When you look at that and tackle that, as you know, Stephen, the blood sugars come down, the A1C comes down, the receptor sites for insulin get restored, and then you actually reverse this condition called diabetes.
Yeah, I like what you said there because, when I started 15 years ago, when I did my training as a specialist practitioner in diabetes and obesity, it was rammed into my brain, this phrase: it's chronic and progressive. And it isn't. But it is when it's managed. Like you say, it's managed. It's not reversed. It's not, yeah, it is a lifestyle problem, definitely, because when you eat this way, you come off your diabetic medications. That happens all the time. People reverse their diabetes. And then you get the idiots to say, well, it's not cured because when they go back to the way they were eating, it'll come back, which is so ridiculous. It's like saying to a person that's given up alcohol, oh, well, you're not cured because as soon as you have a whiskey at the weekend, which you're bound to do because you should do, because it's normal to have a balanced diet with a little bit of alcohol or red wine. It doesn't make any sense to me. It absolutely drives me crazy. I noticed you said about your dad there. My stepdad was my real dad's brother. My real father died very young. Both my parents died when I was very young, and my stepfather was his brother. So there is a genetic link here. I want to make this very clear. And he ended up diabetic. He went into diabetic coma, had to have an amputation.
Mm,
Now, I was pre-diabetic. I could have believed well, it's genetic
yeah.
BS, but it's not. It's lifestyle. Because immediately I stopped the way I was eating, I reversed that pre-diabetes. I did my blood glucose before we came on, 4.2 millimoles. Uh, you know, it's so low, it's unbelievable, and it's really easy to manage. And that's one of the things I think we need to get away from as well, where people say, well, it's genetic, like with obesity, it's genetic. Well, hang on a minute. I got people losing 100 pounds plus. They didn't remove their DNA. They didn't remove their genes. They removed the problematic food. So, your book is just full of it. It's just great. It really does tick a lot of boxes for me. Um,
Thank you,
you
Stephen.
know, and the metabolic freedom that you talk about, and I just wanted to say that is a perfect title because what I've found, I used to crave stuff. I used to, I couldn't walk past Krispy Kreme donut. I loved pizza. I love all that sort of stuff. I can walk past that, no problem. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything. That's the other thing. I've got total food freedom. So your metabolic freedom, I think, goes further for me. I just feel it's like total freedom, food freedom, freedom from stress, freedom from disease. So great title. Anyway, right.
Thank you, brother.
Your head's going to get so big it's not looking on the screen at the moment. But I, I will ask a couple of other questions if you don't mind. Most of my interviews don't go longer than 45 minutes. So
Sure.
I like the way that you look at a complete sort of shift from the way we approach fat loss and metabolic health. So what is the biggest mistake people make when they're trying to, eat clean or lose weight?
Yeah, we talked about a little bit of it already, right? The calories in,
Yeah.
calories out. We already talked about that. That's a mistake. The grazing, another mistake. So here's the thing. I think this is great to share now. Metabolism, right? Metabolism. We hear people say, how do I boost my metabolism? I want to have a fast metabolism. My metabolism is so slow. The metabolism doesn't necessarily work in speeds. It's either efficient or it's inefficient. And we don't necessarily want to continue to have the fastest, and we don't want to boost our metabolism and have the fastest metabolism, is what I'm trying to say, because animals in the wildlife that have the fastest metabolism have the shortest lifespan. So it's not about having the fastest metabolism. When I looked at the studies on metabolism, I found one of the most comprehensive studies ever done on the metabolism from Duke University. I put in the book, 2021 study. Check this out, Stephen. So there were 6,600 people in this study. It was several countries involved in this study, not just the US. There were, I think, 7 or 8 different countries. So it was a worldwide study, 6,600 people. And the age ranges in this study was between as young as 1 year old, a 1 year old, several 1 year olds, to 95 years old, and everything in between. And they measured their metabolism using one of the gold standards of testing, looking at their metabolism. And here's what the study said. The study said between the ages of 20 years old and 60, which is, you just said you're 60 years old, there are no significant changes in the metabolism. Now, here's what it says after that. It says once you reach age 60, they notice in those participants, there's a 0.7% decline in the metabolism every year after age 60. Now, that might sound like bad news for Stephen, who's 60, or somebody who's watching who's 60, but here's the good news. The reason why the metabolism started to decline after age 60, the study says, is because loss of muscle mass. This means if you're 30, 40, 50, and you start, look at that, let's go flex. You got the muscle, and you're like Steven, and you've built the lean muscle mass, you've preserved the lean muscle mass. Or if you're watching and listening and you're 70 years old and you start building, like you just did, the lean muscle mass, you could be 75 years old and have the same metabolism as when you were 25 years old. So, carnivore is great for building lean muscle mass because you're getting a ton of quality protein, a complete protein, lifting weights. I mean, I could tell you lift weights, you just flexed it. You just flexed, excuse me. So this is great news, because if you want to burn fat, build lean muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the more insulin sensitive you are, meaning you don't produce as much insulin because you take food and you start to absorb that like a sponge with your muscle cells. You activate what's called the GLUT4 transporters, and it prevents fractures like osteoporosis, osteopenia, hip fractures. So muscle mass is where it's at. If you're not building muscle, I don't care how old you are right now, whether it's 20 or 70, work on that. You'll burn fat, you'll be more insulin sensitive, and you can have that metabolism being nice and flexible throughout your entire life.
That's a great answer. Any chance to get my guns out, I'll always do it. Right?
Let's go. You should be proud, bro. Looks good.
Yeah. I've just realised I've used a word that's going to get me banned on YouTube.
Oh no, yeah, you said that.
I have to cut that out.
Can't you? Yeah, there's a few words on YouTube you got to be aware of. Yeah.
Yeah. Even in that context. But anyway, so I think 2 final questions. One is, food is good. It's a great way of getting healthy, but sometimes there's some other factor, and that tends to be environmental toxins. I think that's the thing I'm finding. People say to me, well, I'm doing everything, Stephen. I'm doing absolutely everything. My
Yeah.
sleep's still a bit bad. I'm not feeling great. Yes, there's environmental things like looking at screens like we're doing now and all that sort of stuff. But you do talk about this in the book about the environmental toxins. I'd love to hear your take on that a little bit more, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's a big issue. We live in the most toxic world than ever before. So, chapter 5 in the book is all about these environmental toxins. I talk about obesogens. These are endocrine disrupting chemicals. So, they interfere with your hormone production and they create fat human beings, essentially, to make it like lightly. But yes, it makes us fat because they are housed in the fat cells. The body does this very strategically through a pathway called PPAR gamma, where it takes these toxins, puts them in their fat cells. It increases the fat cells. It'll create new fat cells. The toxins are everywhere. There's another classification of toxins I talk about in this chapter called diabetogens, which are specific toxins like heavy metals that disrupt beta cell function in the pancreas that trigger prediabetes and diabetes. And there's several studies coming out showing um, a good percentage of diabetes is caused by these diabetogens. It's a big issue. So we have microplastics as well. We live in a plastic generation. They're finding these microplastics in the brain, the arteries, and a lot of the testicles in men, which is lowering sperm count, lowering testosterone levels, making men infertile. It's everywhere. But now, what can we do? We do have detox pathways. So you want to keep the, and I talk about how to do this in the book, but you want to keep those detox pathways open: exercise, sauna, sweating, movement, um, taking certain binders if you want to do that. There's some supplements you can do. It's not required, but you can do that. And some simple swaps like drinking out of glass bottles instead of plastic water bottles, using glass Tupperware instead of plastic Tupperware, using wooden cutting boards instead of plastic cutting boards. There's a study I put in the book. This is crazy, from the University of Newcastle that showed the average American consumes a credit card size worth of plastic every single week. Every single week. It's insane. So these simple swaps go a long way. I'll give one more tip here. When you're at the gas station, at the supermarket, the grocery store, and they or a convenience store, and they hand you the receipt, say no to the receipt, because there are studies showing that these receipts contain 1,000 times more BPA toxins than canned food. And when you grab it, it goes into your bloodstream. So say no to cash register receipts. They're making you fat. They're making you inflamed. Simple swaps go a long way. You don't want to neglect this. This is very important in this day and age.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, all my Tupperware's glass. I drink out of glasses. Yeah, very
Smart
important,
man.
all that stuff. And it makes a difference. Right. Okay. Final question. And this is just going off topic because it's about you a little bit. And I'm very interested because you did a 30-day carnivore experiment.
Yeah, 90
Uh,
days actually.
oh, 90 days. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you find it? And I think you did find some things about your gut health quite surprising.
Yeah, it was super interesting, huh? Yeah, so I did 90 straight days of carnivore. And, prior to that, I was mostly keto, kind of going in and out of ketosis some days. And I've done different stints of carnivore, 30 days, 45 days. This is the longest time that I've done like 90 straight days of it. I did lab work. I did a stool test, looking at the gut microbiome on day one. And then I did 90 straight days of just protein and fat carnivore, and then tested again on day 90. And my labs were pretty good on day one because I was already healthy. On day 90, they just improved, right? My inflammation was great. It got even better. My insulin was great. It was still great on day 90. So nothing really significant with the labs. I will say actually this, my total cholesterol went from around 300 on day one to 450 on day 90. And my LDL went from 150, I believe, or 200 on day one to 350 on day 90. And you would think, man, that's a problem. But no, because I measured the particle sizes of the LDL, and the majority, almost all of them, were the pattern A, large and fluffy, healthy variety, not the small, sticky pattern B. All my inflammatory markers were great. Insulin was great. I even had Dr. Philip Ovadia review those labs, who's a world renowned heart surgeon who loves carnivore. We've done an interview right here. And he said, you were healthy on day one. You were even healthier on day 90. Now that's the labs. The gut health was interesting because when I got the report back from the day one findings, it said, your diversity, your gut microbiome, it's average. It's not bad. It's not great. But here's some suggestions for you. Eat more plants, eat more fiber, eat more polyphenols, do less keto, eat less meat. This is what the report said to increase my diversity. But what did I do, Stephen? The exact opposite. And I did 90 straight days. And you would think when I retested, man, this is going to be ugly. I did the exact opposite of the recommendation. Well, what I saw on day 90 was everything in my gut microbiome improved. My diversity went up. As a matter of fact, there were 5 keystone bacteria that showed up on day 90 that did not show up on day 1, and 7 core bacteria show up on day 90 that was not there on day 1. So it goes to show that carnivore can do wonders, and it will not wreck the gut. In my case, it actually really improved my gut microbiome.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. I mean, I had my gut testing done and it was optimal, but
I believe it.
the lab in the UK is the same probably in America. They have to send out these standard sentences, and it's still
Yeah.
recommended because you answer a diet question. You need more fruit and veg, and I'm thinking, well, if you're optimal, why do I do that? Why do I
Yeah.
need to do that? Anyway, I thought that's
Silly.
great. Okay, so Ben, as I thought, totally professional, full of great information, which is exactly why you're on the channel. If people want to get hold of you or they want to buy the book, what's the best way to do these things?
Thank you, Stephen. Love your work. I'm happy to see your YouTube channel grow. Everybody, support Stephen, subscribe, like, share the channel. He's really cares about what he's doing, and you know what you're doing. So it's important to drown out all the bad information out there with valuable information that you're bringing, Stephen. Thank you for the opportunity. I know we were trying to get this scheduled for quite some time. I have a gift for your audience. So I just got the author copies of the book. I'm not sure when this exact interview comes out, but the book releases May 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a gift for your audience. So the book's available worldwide in the UK, Australia, but the US, Canada as well, on hardcover, Audible. I narrated the Audible myself. So if you're more of an Audible person, it's my voice. It was tough to do. And
Mm.
Kindle. And we have a gift. So if you go to metabolicfreedombook.com, you'll find different retailers to buy the book, whatever you prefer. But on that page, there's a free gift, which is an entire course that I built out on the metabolism that you get for free, 12 lessons. We're not collecting a credit card and fooling you and giving you some trial. No credit card required. It's completely free. And in that course, there are exclusive interviews with Dr. Jason Fung, the legend,
Mm-hmm.
Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, and Dr. Daniel Pampa. And you cannot find any of those interviews anywhere else. You get that with the course if you go to metabolicfreedombook.com.
Excellent. That's fabulous. And I'll put all the links in the description. So it's really super easy for you to just click and go there. Thank you for the offer of that free gift for everybody, which is brilliant. So Ben Azadi, thank you so much.
Stephen Thomas, thank you so much, my friend.